Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you might be. And of course, to our Jewish watchers who are watching live right now, it is Friday, so Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining for another episode of The Goldie Show. Guys, I'm still waiting for the Piers Morgan interview to come out. I don't know. I guess maybe he's milking it because there's a lot of, it's interesting. There's like a lot of tension. There's a lot of drama. About this, and for good reason, right? Like there's literally a Christian genocide that's happening in Nigeria right now, and the Islamist government is denying it. But it's generated a lot of news articles, and like I've now sort of been caught in this, online war, almost between Piers Morgan and the foreign affairs minister. So that's interesting. I'm monitoring that. I hope I did a good job. I think I did a good job. I'm pretty sure I called out the Islamist nonsense pretty well. I even spoke about the Muslim ticket, right? Remember how like Zari was saying previously in one of our live streams when he joined us that he said typically when the president is a Christian, the vice president's going to be Muslim, and vice versa. I even spoke about that. So let's see. Hopefully it will come out today. And as soon as it does, I will definitely share the link with all of you on that. But yeah, so today we're going to talk about one of my favorite authors and activists. Her name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And if you don't know who she is, then you will definitely be familiar with her just after this particular episode, but also just in general, because I do want to showcase and feature more people who speak on radical Islamism and anti-Semitism, just like I do. And, these are people who you might not be as familiar with, or maybe you are, I'm not sure. But we're going to, talk more about this because it's not just me. There are many of us who are victims of Islamic terrorism and radical Islam. And Ayaan Hirsi Ali is one of these people. I just want to share a little bit about her briefly from, this is her bio on her webpage. So Ayaan is a Somali-born classical liberal, a free speech advocate, an activist for the rights of women and girls, a public intellectual with a powerful voice, a woman that does not back down when she sees a problem. Previously a member of the Dutch Parliament. So just like me, she was a former politician, guys. So she was a member of the Dutch Parliament from 2003 to 2006. So she was a politician for 3 years. I was a politician for 7 years. She regularly called for furthering the integration of non-Western immigrants into Dutch society and defending the rights of Muslim women. Now, a research fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University, and founder of the AHA Foundation, she regularly comments on today's issues and offers a platform to exchange perspectives that lead to real solutions. She has written several books, including Infidel, which I'm actually currently in the process of reading right now. Infidel, it's a very good book. Nomad, Heretic, and The Challenge of Dawa. Her newest book, Pray, is available now. Her podcast, the Ayaan Hirsi Ali podcast, launched in 2021. So that's a little bit of background info about her. So now we're going to get into this lecture. And I saw this on YouTube, and I was going to kind of watch it on my own and then provide, just sort of commentary. But I figured, why not watch this together? Because there's a lot here that we can go over. So I'll just pull up. So this is available on YouTube, and I will provide the link to this YouTube video when I'm done the live stream. So it's called Our Crisis of Anti-Semitism and Islamism. And this was on April 11 of this past year. So just maybe about, half a year ago, she was speaking about this. So the lecture occurred on April 4 during University of Austin's first week of spring term. So we're going to watch this lecture because I've heard good things about it. So let's see what Ayaan has to say about, as she likes to call it, the crisis of anti-Semitism and Islamism. And, as you guys may have heard me say before, anti-Semitism and Islamism are two sides of the same coin, right?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the University of Austin again. I know it's been a huge week, and I know that some of you now have been with us right from the very beginning of the week, where we had the 71st Secretary of the Treasury, Larry Summers, with us. We then had Peter Thiel for two fantastic lectures out of the four that he's giving here this week. But tonight is the night that we've all really been waiting for, because it's the first time since we opened as a university that we've been able to welcome as a guest speaker the great Ayaan Hirsi Ali into campus to give a keynote address. It's a very, very exciting night for us all here at UATX. Now, I've been speaking far too much this week already, so I thought for tonight's lecture in particular, it would be much nicer if we had one of our students do the introducing, the formal introducing tonight. So just after the keynote takes place tonight, Katharina Erlinger, who is the editor of the Austin Beacon, which is our student-founded newspaper here, is going to be interviewing Ayaan Hirsi Ali for that publication. So I thought it would be better for Katharina to come and give the introduction tonight. So Katharina grew up in Italy, but comes to us most recently from Utah as a member of our founding class. And I'd like you to welcome her to give the introduction tonight. Katharina.
Thank you, everybody. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is a hero. She has dedicated her life to oppose the oppression of Muslim women, Islamic radicalism, and to preserve Western values. Her story introduced me to the shocking reality of genital mutilation, forced marriages, and extremism of the Islamic world she grew up in.
I mean, that's actually one thing that a lot of people don't really talk about or know about. There are certain cultures where female genital mutilation is still heavily practiced. It doesn't happen in Iran. It's never been a part of Iranian culture. So it's not an issue in Iran, unless it's with, certain parts of the Kurdish population. So in northern Iran, there are certain Kurds, unfortunately, who still practice that. But in Kurdish people outside of Iran, the rate of female genital mutilation is about 50%. And of course, in places like Somalia and Egypt and elsewhere, those numbers are much higher. It's a very sensitive topic. A lot of focus was put on that before, but not a lot of focus is being put on it now. But it is like a horrific thing, absolutely horrific, right?
Reading her biography showed me her journey of traversing two worlds, the Middle Eastern world of her childhood and the Western world of her adulthood, and the courage, resilience, and determination required to leave everything and start anew in a new world. Her journey is a reminder to us that our Western assumptions in civilization are not universal. They are special, and we should guard them and be proud of them.
That is so true. Like, not all civilizations are equal. Not all cultures are equal. And I think, I know because I've seen it with my own eyes, one of the biggest mistake that non-Middle Eastern people make, especially people in Western countries like, in North America or Europe, you guys just assume that everyone is the same. Like, you guys assume that everyone wants the same thing. That's not the case, guys. There are literally people out there who want nothing more than to destroy your way of life, and your culture and your civilization, because they believe that they are superior, and they will do anything and everything they can to get rid of you and destroy you. So I think it is definitely one of the biggest mistakes that non-Middle Eastern people make, is they just assume everyone is like a kumbaya, we love each other people. There are genuinely bad people out there who are indoctrinated, and you've never done anything to them, and yet they want to, murder you. It's just that's just the truth.
Her life is a reminder of what a society without freedom, without tolerance, and without dignity looks like.
Yep.
We can all learn to be stronger, more valiant protectors of our beliefs from Hirsi Ali's trials and triumphs. From being raised in an Islamic fundamentalist society to working in the highest institutions of the Western world. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was born in Mogadishu, Somalia in 1969. As she grew up, she embraced Islam and strove to live as a devout Muslim. In 1992, Hirsi Ali fled to the Netherlands to escape a forced marriage. There, she was given asylum and in time citizenship. She quickly learned Dutch and was able to study at the University of Leiden. From 2003 to 2006, Hirsi Ali served as an elected member of the Dutch Parliament. She then moved to the US and in 2007 funded the AAH Foundation to protect and defend the rights of women in the US from harmful traditional practices. Hirsi Ali is a fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University, a senior fellow with the Future Diplomacy Project at the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at the Harvard Kennedy School, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, and the founder of Courage Media. She's the best-selling author of Infidel and Heretic, Why Islam Needs a Reformation Now. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and privilege to welcome this woman of rare courage and insight into our polity here tonight. Please welcome Ayaan Hirsi Ali to UATX.
I mean, this woman is one of my role models, right? Like I love everything about her, and I have so much respect for her.
Thank you, Catalina. That was a great deal of flattery, and I appreciate it. I am here tonight to speak to you about the Islamist-driven anti-Semitism in the West. It's a pretty intense topic. And all I can say is, I'm really sorry that I didn't bring you something more cheerful. I'm going to...
So Ayaan's already made statements about Europe. She actually thinks, so this is from back in April. I can't remember when she actually made the statement, but in her opinion, she thinks that Europe is already gone. Like she thinks that it's already over. Like the situation is so bad in Europe. She doesn't think that it can be fixed. Like that, like in her perspective, that's how bad the Islamist problem is in Europe, right?
Start with an anecdote. A few weeks ago, I went to a hair salon in a small village in remote Britain. I say Britain because I'm constantly hiding where I am, but trust me, it's very remote and very small. My stylist was a white, middle-aged male with tattoos and punched earlobes. Like most stylists, he was making small talk. He was complaining about the high cost of living, as many people in Britain do these days. He said he had always voted Labour, but now regretted it as they were making things worse. The radio was on, playing music interrupted by a brief news bulletin. There was an update on Russia's war on Ukraine. My hairstylist said, "There you have it. It's the Rothschilds." I told him I didn't understand what he was trying to tell me, and he went into detail. The Rothschilds make their money from war, he said, and they control the world. When I gasped, "The whole world?" he said, "Yes, the World Economic Forum." And then he launched into another explanation of how Jews control the World Economic Forum and were instigators of the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, the bombing of small children in Gaza, and now Ukraine.
If you actually look at the documents, it is factually proven that when George W. Bush wanted to go and strike Iraq, Israel was actually trying to convince Bush not to do that. Israel was saying, don't go after Iraq. There's nothing there. You know, your best bet is to go after the Islamic Republic in Iran. So Israel actually tried to discourage George W. Bush from starting the Iraq war. But again, for these, anti-Semites and conspiracy theorists, it doesn't matter, right? Like they'll just parrot like this sort of, anti-Semitic propaganda that Ayaan Hirsi is telling us about. But go look it up. Like Israel literally tried to discourage the United States from starting the Iraq war.
Rothschild's greed, he said, was causing masses of people to leave their homes because of wars, and many of those victims of war are now here, making life harder for us. I was stunned. I had been following the uptick in anti-Semitism everywhere in the West, but away from my research and my laptop, and in the context of small talk at the hair salon, I had to acknowledge that anti-Semitism had gone mainstream. If you think I'm exaggerating, here are the statistics. Back to the laptop. Surveys in Europe show that 96% of European Jews have faced anti-Semitism, with 80% believing it has worsened over the past 5 years. Many report frequent harassment, primarily online and in public spaces. Following October 7, 2023, and the Gaza conflict, anti-Semitic incidents surged by 400% in countries like Austria, Sweden, and surprisingly, Denmark. Attacks on
and Canada too. Like anti-Semitism just surged incredibly.
Synagogues, cemeteries, and individuals have increased across nations like France, Germany, and in the UK. In Eastern Europe, far-right movements contribute to anti-Semitic rhetoric and violence. Every Jewish person I speak to, and especially in these surveys, say that there is a sense of impending doom. In the USA, is it any better? Yes. Following the October 7 attacks, anti-Semitic incidents in the US increased by over 200%. The ADL reported more than 10,000 incidents from October 2023 to September 2024. In 23 alone, there were 8,873 recorded anti-Semitic incidents. Anti-Semitism surged on college campuses by 500% and online. In America, around 69% of Jewish adults reported encountering anti-Semitism on social media, rising up to 83% among young Jewish adults. A January 2024 study found that 24% of Americans harbor extensive prejudices, with young generations showing higher rates. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in America. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand are not better. In Canada, hate crimes against Jews increased by 71% in 2023, accounting for 19% of all hate crimes and 70% of religiously motivated hate crimes. In Australia is a very large country geographically, but the population is relatively small. There were 2,000 cases reported of attacks, including arson in synagogues and schools. And in Australia, they find, and I think it's the same in other countries, these incidents span the ideological spectrum of far-right, far-left, and Islamist. In New Zealand, anti-Semitic hate crimes rose by 530% in 2022 and in 2023. Jews are disproportionately targeted, being up to 160 times more likely to face hate crimes than other groups. Schools have been...
It's so true. I mean, typically the Jewish population is one of the smallest populations anywhere in the world. And yet the amount of hate crimes and, violent attacks, and even just targeting in general, like it's incredibly disproportionate. And it is also incredibly, it's basically gaslighting at this point where you have these Islamic jihadi terrorists who are in Canada, who are, on one hand, they're out in the streets, blocking intersections, yelling Allahu Akbar, chanting globalize the Intifada. Intifada literally means, suicide bombs and all that jihadi nonsense, right? They're out there doing that. And then as soon as we call them out on their terrorist behavior, they complain about Islamophobia, right? Like Islamophobia doesn't exist. However, Jew hate is a very, very real thing. But this is how these Islamists turn the narrative around, right? Like they use language to push their jihadi ideology while at the same time trying to portray themselves as like the victims, right?
In a major site of anti-Semitism, with 80% of Jewish students experiencing prejudice since at least October 2023. I don't know how much on Islamism, how much knowledge on Islamism to assume among this group here tonight. I will address the clarification of Islamism versus regular Muslims during the Q&A, but in the interest of...
And guys, that's a really, really important distinction. And, one of the ways that these radicals try to silence us and, accuse us of like Islamophobia or whatever, is because while we are making that distinction, they want to confuse you into thinking that it's one and the same when it really isn't, right? So again, it's not just coming from, me, someone who's from Iran, you're also hearing it from Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who is a Muslim from Somalia, right? So at some point, you have to kind of take a step back and go, why is it that all of these various people from various parts of the Middle East or North Africa all have the same narrative and the same experience, and yet every single one of them is accused of being like, Islamophobic or something, right? Like critical thinking skills are important here.
Time, I want to move on. And before I move on, I want to give you a taste of the Islamist-driven hatred of Jews. Please play the video.
Okay, guys, so before we get into this, if you guys are not following Memory, you need to follow them. I'm actually planning a whole episode where we're just going to review different Memory videos. What Memory does is it's a nonprofit, and it takes all of these various clips from various Arab speaking countries, also Iran as well, like clips from the Islamic Republic. They're not, that's not Arabic, that's Farsi, but it takes all these clips basically from people who are promoting these like radical Islamist views, and then they translate it into English. So Memory is definitely an account and organization you want to follow, because they are doing God's work in exposing the Islamist narrative, right? And these are things that you would never see in mainstream media. These are things where, they say one thing in Arabic or Farsi, and then they say another thing in English, right?
من حالة نفسية مضطربة لأنهم هم سارقون هم.
Wow, so like look at this. Like this guy is literally on some, TV station. Like what TV station is it? I don't even know. I don't speak Arabic, but he's basically saying the Jews, what did he say? He said so he's literally saying in Arabic. Wait, let's go back. The Jews suffer a mental disorder because they are thieves and aggressors, right? Like this is how they speak to each other in Arabic. And yet when we expose them, right, we expose their insane ideology, we're accused of Islamophobia, right?
لأنهم هم سارقون هم معتدون والسارق والمعتدي الذي أخذ مالا بغير حق أو أرضا بغير حق يظل في اضطراب نفسي واضطراب في وجداني أنه أخذ شيئا واعتدى عليه. هم يريدوا أن يثبتوا للعالم، أن يثبتوا للواقع الدولي والإقليمي أنهم أصحاب حق. هم جرثومة غريبة، جرثومة وما.
Like, so these, so this guy's with Hamas, right? So this guy's like a, Palestinian, whatever Palestine means. And he's literally saying that Jewish people are a foreign bacteria. Like, do you see how this narrative in Arabic is starting to seep, or not is starting to, it has seeped into the English language, and how it has now, this sort of rhetoric is now more and more common in the English language. Guys, it starts with these Islamists. It starts in their own language, and then they slowly, bring it into yours. And for those of you who are saying, oh, I don't have an issue with Jews, I have an issue with Zionists, right? Zionism. Okay, so why isn't this guy didn't say the word Zionist? He says the word Jew. Okay, so that right there, guys, that right there, that like stops, right? That stops the whole, oh, we don't hate Jews, we have no issues with the Jews, we only have an issue with the Zionists, right? But in their own language, they don't say Zionist. In their own language, they say Jew, right? Because that's exactly what they mean. And these people are trying to weaponize language, okay? So they're weaponizing language in order to push their Islamic jihadi ideology. Pay attention, right? So he never says Zionist, he says Jews.
نفسية مضطربة لأنهم هم سارقون هم معتدون والسارق والمعتدي الذي أخذ مالا بغير حق أو أرضا بغير حق يظل في اضطراب نفسي واضطراب في وجداني أنه أخذ شيئا واعتدى عليه. هم يريدوا أن يثبتوا للعالم، أن يثبتوا للواقع الدولي والإقليمي أنهم أصحاب حق. هم جرثومة غريبة، جرثومة وميكروب لا مثيل له في الوجود. والله مش أنا الذي أقول، القرآن الكريم وصفهم بأن.
Wow, so he's saying that the Quran is saying that Jewish people have no place in the world, right? I mean, that doesn't really sound like a religion to me. That sounds more like a cult, just saying. That sounds like a weird cult. There you go. Guys, look at this. Oh, I just missed it. Let me go back here, right? Where he said. So the Quran says, you shall find the strongest men in enmity to be the believers, to be the Jews, right? He's not talking about Zionists. He's not talking about the Zionists. We're talking about Jews, right? He's saying the Quran says that the Jews are our enemies. That's not coming from me. That's coming from him, right? And that's what he says right there. So this is what they believe, guys. This is what they believe the Quran says, right? So when they talk about their jihad, when they talk about their religious fight, it's not me saying it. It's him. It's him. The words are right there, guys. See, he said, guys, he didn't say Zionist. He said Yahud. Did you catch that? Guys, even if you don't speak a word of Arabic, you know the word Yahud when you hear it. Listen to this, guys. Let's go back just to be very clear. He's not talking about the Zionists, right? He's talking about the Jews, the Yahud.
أخذ شيئا واعتدى عليه. هم يريدوا أن يثبتوا للعالم، أن يثبتوا للواقع الدولي والإقليمي أنهم أصحاب حق. هم جرثومة غريبة، جرثومة وميكروب لا مثيل له في الوجود. والله مش.
Is there no word for microbe in Arabic? I'm just curious.
أنا الذي أقول، القرآن الكريم.
See, Al-Quran. So the Quran says.
وصفهم بأنهم لا يوجد لهم مثيل لتجدن.
Okay, so now you're going to hear him say the word Yahud.
أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود.
Right? These are things, guys, that you will not see in mainstream media. You're never going to see them talk like this in English, right? Because in English, they're trying to confuse you. They're trying to lie to you. And they're trying to push a narrative that makes them look like the victims, right? When they are in reality, they are the terrorists. They are the oppressors. They are the genociders. And they are the colonizers. Guys, remember that. These people are the colonizers.
لك هيك قرفة ناس لا عندهم لا دين ولا مبدأ ولا ضمير ولا.
Wow. So did you hear that? Again, so he's saying they want to annihilate everyone who practices Judaism. Again, how is that like, Zionism is not the same thing as Judaism, right? Like, do you see how this sort of, anti-Zionist narrative, it just breaks down when you actually dig into it? When they say Zionist, that's just a code word for Jew. That's basically a code word for Jew. And they don't hide it in Arabic, right? They just say like we need to eradicate the Jews, right? The only reason they use the word Zionist in English is because non-Middle Eastern people have unfortunately fallen for this, especially when it comes to like the woke keffiyeh wearing watermelon people who are triggered when the wrong pronoun is used, right? Those people are stupid enough to fall for this idiocy.
أنا أستنكر ممن يؤمن بالتطبيع معهم، ممن يؤمن بالجلوس معهم، ممن يؤمن أن هؤلاء بشر ليسوا بشر وليسوا أناس وليسوا.
Yeah, right. They're Bashar. Bashar is people, right? So he's saying they're not people, they're not human beings, right? He didn't say Zionists, he's saying the Jews, right? This is who they are. This is who they are.
لا بذوات دين ولا ضمير ولا أخلاق.
وإحنا كراهيتنا أو كرهنا لليهود.
Did you hear? Yahud, right? So he's saying our hatred for the Jews is based upon our faith. Wow. Whoa. These people are out there saying that it is their religious duty to hate Jewish people.
من منطلق عقيدة القرآن هو اللي بيدعونا ان احنا نكرههم.
Oh, so he's saying that the Quran, right? The Quran is telling him and people like him that it is their religious duty to hate Jewish people. It's not me saying it. That's them saying it in their own language to themselves, right? This is the kind of stuff that they don't want you to know about. This is the kind of stuff that they do not want to be exposed.
ما نحبهمش.
لو أن اليهود تركوا لنا فلسطين خلاص يبقوا حبايبنا؟ لا طبعا. عمرهم ما هيبقوا حبايبنا. إطلاقا.
Wow, so even if the Jews were to, let's say, just completely leave Israel, right? That's still not good enough for them. That's still not good enough. Right? Do you see how these people think? Do you see how they've been fooling you? Where they kind of change the language and the narrative in English, right? In English, they, pretend that they're victims. In English, they talk about, colonize, whatever colonization nonsense they put out there. Meanwhile, they're literally savage, inbred, genocidal maniacs.
عقيدتك في اليهود واحد انهم كفار، اثنين انهم اعداء. مش اعداء عشان يحتلوا فلسطين. وانما هم اعداء ولو لم يحتلوا شيء.
Wow, so this guy is basically saying that the very fact that a Jewish person exists is enough to call them an enemy, right? Like he's saying, even if they weren't in Israel, right? Even if there was not a single Jewish person in Israel, the very fact that they exist means that they're an infidel and they're an enemy. Wow.
نحن نعادي يهود حتى ولو أعادوا إلينا فلسطين لأنهم كفار.
I mean, guys, I don't speak Arabic, but I understand Yahud, right? Jew. Again, they're not saying Zionist, right? They're not saying Zionist here. They're talking about the Yahud, the Jews. And then they mention the Quran again. And then, of course, kafar, which is infidel, a word that many of us infidels are very, very familiar with. Wow, these people are not mincing words. Wow.
هؤلاء هم اليهود باختصار. وإن لنا عندهم نحن المسلمين لثأرا لا والله لن ينقضي إلا باستئصالهم بإذن الله تعالى، لأنهم حاولوا ابتداء قتل نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم مرات. أعداء المسلمين بعد إبليس هم اليهود. من الذي قال ذلك؟ الله.
How much of that did you cut?
Wow. Okay, guys, we have to go back and watch this again. That was a wild ride, guys. I mean, I there are some crazy clips out there. And I've seen them and I'm planning on sharing them with you. I did not expect Ayaan to just go for it. And like each video worse than the last. That was I mean, I know what they say. I know how they think. I know the rhetoric they put out there, and I was still shocked. So I can only imagine for those of you who have never seen something like this, how like shocking it must be. Those university students who are sitting there right now in front of Ayaan, they're probably traumatized right now. They're probably going like, what the actual F, right? But yeah, when those of us who are from the Middle East, when we tell you that these people are vile and radical and savage and dangerous and all they want is death and destruction and war, this is what we're talking about. All right, let's go back and watch this again, guys, because that was definitely that was a wild ride. That was a wild ride. But at least, you know what? Now we know what to expect, so we can go back and we can rewatch this. And again, guys, I want to point out, these people never say the word Zionist. They always say Jew, right? Keep that in mind. Jeez. Okay. Oh, and these are the ones who are coming into like your countries and pretending they're victims, right? Keep that in mind as well.
من حالة نفسية مضطربة لأنهم هم سارقون، هم معتدون، والسارق والمعتدي الذي أخذ مالا بغير حق أو أرضا بغير حق يظل في اضطراب نفسي واضطراب في وجداني أنه أخذ شيئا واعتدى عليه. هم يريدوا أن يثبتوا للعالم، أن يثبتوا للواقع الدولي والإقليمي أنهم أصحاب حق. هم جرثومة غريبة، جرثومة وميكروب لا مثيل له في الوجود. والله مش أنا الذي أقول، القرآن الكريم وصفهم بأنهم لا يوجد لهم مثيل. لتجدن أشد الناس عداوة للذين آمنوا اليهود. يهلك هيك قرفة ناس لا عندهم لا دين ولا مبدأ ولا ضمير ولا. أنا أستنكر ممن يؤمن بالتطبيع معهم، ممن يؤمن بالجلوس معهم، ممن يؤمن أن هؤلاء بشر ليسوا بشر وليسوا أناس وليسوا لا بذوات دين ولا ضمير ولا أخلاق.
وإحنا كراهيتنا أو كرهنا لليهود من منطلق عقيدة.
That's awkward. I mean, that's imagine like someone trying to defend this guy in English and trying to defend him.
القرآن هو اللي بيدعونا ان احنا نكرههم وما نحبهمش.
لو أن اليهود تركوا لنا فلسطين خلاص يبقوا حبايبنا؟ لا طبعا، عمرهم ما هيبقوا حبايبنا.
Is it just me, or do they also all kind of look inbred? Like there's something wrong with their facial features, guys.
إطلاقا. عقيدتك في اليهود واحد انهم كفار، اثنين انهم اعداء. مش اعداء عشان يحتلوا فلسطين، وانما هم اعداء ولو لم يحتلوا شيئا.
نحن نعادي يهود حتى ولو أعادوا إلينا فلسطين لأنهم كفار.
هؤلاء هم اليهود باختصار، وإن لنا عندهم نحن المسلمين لثأرا لا والله لن ينقضي إلا باستئصالهم بإذن الله تعالى، لأنهم حاولوا ابتداء قتل نبينا صلى الله عليه وسلم.
All I can say is like, thank God that I don't speak Arabic, because like even the Salah Allah, like whatever stuff he's saying, I'm like, all right, like that's enough jihad for me, guys. Like I'm like jihaded out at this point, and we're not even done this video.
مرات أعداء المسلمين بعد إبليس هم اليهود. من الذي قال ذلك؟ الله.
How much of that did you cut?
Whew. Wow, I need a moment there. Like, guys, I mean, I feel bad for Arabic speakers. I really do. Like the fact that Arabic speakers, you guys have to deal with that sort of nonsense. Ugh, like, man. I mean, then again, like I have to deal with it in Farsi anyway with the Islamic Republic occupying Iran, right? Like they'll spout their anti-Semitic BS and nonsense in Farsi. So I mean, it is like it's just, you know, just horrible having to deal with their anti-Semitic Islamic jihadi nonsense. But there you go, guys. There you go. So that's, you know, that's what they really think. And that's what you don't see in the mainstream media, right? Because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? It doesn't fit the narrative. And, you know, Islamophobia, right? All right, let's see what Ayaan has to say. So these were the clips that Ayaan Hirsi Ali prepared for the university students at the University of Austin, Texas. I almost wish that we had a camera angle from the other side so that we could like see the reactions of the university students to watching those clips, because I can guarantee you the reactions would be priceless. Like they probably are just going like, what the actual F did I just see right now?
It's subtitled. I'll quote one of them, one of the gentlemen with the interesting garb on his head. His name.
One of the gentlemen with the interesting garb on his head. Yeah, I don't know if I would call those people gentlemen, but there we go.
His name is Abdallah Jarbu. He's the first guy you see, I think. He was the
and also keep in mind, guys, keep in mind. So Ayaan is a Muslim, right? Like, so she is a Muslim woman. Okay, keep that in mind.
One of the gentlemen with the interesting garb on his head. His name is Abdallah Jarbu. He's the first guy you see, I think. He was the Hamas Deputy Minister of Religious Endowments. And here he's caught on Al-Aqsa television in Gaza. And this clip is from the 28th of February in 2010. And he says, it's a long quote. He says, the Jews suffer from a mental disorder because they're thieves and aggressors. A thief or an aggressor who took property or land develops a psychological disorder and pangs of conscience because he took something that was not his. They want to present themselves to the world as if they have rights, but in fact, they are foreign bacteria, a microbe unparalleled in the world. It's not me who says this. The Quran itself says that they have no parallel. You shall find the strongest men in enmity to the believers to be Jews. May he annihilate these filthy people who have neither religion nor conscience. I condemn whoever believes in normalizing relations with them, whoever supports sitting down with them, and whoever believes that they're human beings. End quote. That last line where he is saying he condemns the people who sit down with them, that is directed towards governments in Muslim-majority countries who, during the Arab Spring, were affected and who would consider, and now recently, since the Abraham Accords, have indeed normalized relations with them. So that, in a nutshell, I think gives you the distinction between Islamists and regular Muslims. Regular Muslims, and especially with Muslim governments, have adopted, the idea of the nation state, and they're running governments. Then they may not be running these governments well. They may be tyrannical. They are not democratic. Some governments are better than others. I think the government of the UAE is, for instance, better than the government of Egypt in attending to the needs of their citizens. But generally speaking, their politics is not centered on Islamism. The Islamists are a modern political movement that came into existence after the fall of the Caliphate in 1924. The Caliphate, the Muslim Caliphate, the Ottoman Empire declined and fell and was abolished officially in 1924. And there was this split between the Muslim elites back then. What do we do about this decline and fall? And
I'm really glad she's bringing this up, because not a lot of people talk about the fact that the fall of the Ottoman Empire played a huge role in the rise of Islamism, right? Like all of these like the Islamists themselves, or the ignorant white people, Western people who like apologize for them, they blame the rise of Islamic terrorism on like white people and colonialism, which is completely untrue. The rise of Islamism actually started with the fall of the Ottoman Empire. Guys, pay attention to this part. Like, this is important.
The Islamists are a modern political movement that came into existence after the fall of the Caliphate in 1924. The Caliphate, the Muslim Caliphate, the Ottoman Empire declined and fell, and was abolished officially in 1924. And there was this split between the Muslim elites back then. What do we do about this decline and fall? And one group decided they wanted to westernize and form nation states, whereas the other group, most of them clerics, said, no way, we declined and fell because we distanced ourselves from the Prophet's actual mission, which was to spread Islam to the rest of the world. So we have to rebuild the individual, rebuild the family, rebuild society, rebuild the caliphate and revive it, and then carry on with the Prophet's mission. So,
and, unfortunately, they were successful in Iran in 1979, right?
basically, that is what Islamism is. In Western societies, the campaigns to fight anti-Semitism that started right after the end of the Second World War were sustained, they were comprehensive, and they were very effective throughout the Cold War. My compliments go to the pioneers, the compilers, the curators, the funders, and tireless activists who envisioned a world with no anti-Semitism. Their slogan was never again, and it was hugely successful as this kind of open, all-consuming hatred of Jews disappeared from mainstream society. Of course, it lived on in the fringes of the far right, the neo-Nazi and white supremacist circles, and it also lived on in Russia and the former Soviet Union, and later on in the countries that joined Eastern Europe. But the national efforts of collective reckoning that was undertaken in Germany and other Western European countries, the memorialization of the Holocaust, the mandatory education in schools and universities, the collaborations with Yad Vashem in Israel, and reparations, that was admirable and it was effective. However, on the issue of Jew hatred, things have changed, and they have changed in 5 major ways. The first is due to the mass transformative migration to the West that has been underway for decades. And with it came the Islamist-driven anti-Semitism, which was commonplace in Muslim countries. I'm invited to platforms to come and tell my story. 25 years ago, my story of growing up in Somalia, undergoing female genital mutilation, a forced marriage, and then fleeing to Europe and building a life in a small, homogeneous European country, that was seen as astonishing or exceptional to the Western audiences who were shielded from the world I was born and raised in my early 20s. But most of those audiences are no longer shielded from the third world. In some ways, we have become the third world. If you look at things like the civic tension in Europe, and even in America, the polarization, the exposure of women and children to harm and exploitation, the poverty, the dislocation, whether voluntary or compelled, the religious fanaticism, war, or the threats of war, be it civil or a foreign invasion, all these things are now going on in France, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Sweden, in Belgium, and in other places. So number one, it is immigration, invasive, transformative, and mostly Muslim. Second, the internet and new technologies have made it a lot easier to propagate anti-Semitism.
Guys, this is so true. This is, all of these like people on TikTok who get their info from like AJ Plus, right? Social media has played a big part in radicalizing non-Middle Eastern people and making them believe all of the anti-Semitic jihadi nonsense that the Islamists put out there, right? And I do believe that social media is partly to blame for the rapid growth not just in anti-Semitism and Jew hate, but also in like this radicalization of people. And also, I think social media plays a big role in why you have people who maybe a few years ago weren't able to, they didn't know the difference between Hamas and hummus. And today, right, they're calling Hamas freedom fighters and resistance, right? You don't just randomly wake up one day and, call an Islamic terror group resistance. That is like something that, has been slowly introduced to you and you've been like indoctrinated into it, right? So I think she's going to talk about social media now, but yeah, social media has played a big role in this. And I think part of it is because, it is the great equalizer, which is really good in some ways because, it does put everyone on a level playing field. But when you're putting Islamic terrorists on the same level playing field as everyone else, that's where the problem comes in, right? Because now it almost seems as if like they're getting like the legitimacy and the credibility to spread their Islamic jihadi propaganda. And if you try to call it out, then people attack you and just say, oh, like respect all cultures, diversity of opinion, right? People are mistaking diversity of opinion with Islamic terrorism, right? Islamic terrorism is not diversity, it's death, right? And we have to be able to call it out and accept that. Like I'm all about free speech and everything like that, but Islamic terrorist rhetoric and that ideology is a danger and should be banned, right? It should be banned because it's not just someone having a rational conversation with difference of opinions. It's someone who literally wants to take over, and implement a global Islamic caliphate, and they will stop at nothing to do so. And they are prepared to murder people on the path of, Allah or whatever it is.
Video I showed you now was on Twitter.
Let me go back a little bit here.
Migration, invasive, transformative, and mostly Muslim. Second, the internet and new technologies have made it a lot easier to propagate anti-Semitism. The video I showed you now was on Twitter. For the Twitter X, formerly Twitter. For the millennial and Gen Z generations, modern technology has given them the opportunity to be both passive consumers of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and Israelophobia, and active participants as content creators. They can generate fresh content all the time, and it doesn't have to meet any standards of veracity. Paradoxically, the growing education levels of many Muslims in the West has actually accelerated the hatred for Jews and for Israel in particular. The democratization of information has unleashed the creativity, the imagination of many Muslims to devote untold hours of their time, paid and voluntary, to advancing the most disgusting, false, libelous, and horrific lies about Jews and Israel. They dusted off copies of the Nazi and European literature on anti-Semitism and reimagined it for our time. Today, when the narrative of colonialism is considered the greatest sin of human history, Israel is accused of being the ultimate colonial project.
Keep in mind, guys, remember, this is like, I want to go back and listen to this again because she is making so many key, critical, important points here, right? Like she is literally touching upon every single false narrative that the Islamists and jihadis have put out, but she's also not mincing words when it comes to what she believes is the root cause of this rising anti-Semitism, right? Let's go back again, listen to her words. These are her words, not mine. She's a Muslim from Somalia, guys. Ayaan Hirsi Ali is a Muslim from Somalia.
Fanaticism, undergoing female genital mutilation, a forced marriage, and then fleeing to Europe and building a life in a small, homogeneous European country, that was seen as astonishing or exceptional to the Western audiences who were.
I also wanted to thank Mr. K for the support. I appreciate that. I've now met my shekel quota, I guess, let's say, just a little way to troll all the haters. But no, thank you for that. Thank you for supporting my channel. Oh, Shabbat Shalom from Israel. Shabbat Shalom. I did mention, a Shabbat Shalom at the beginning of my live stream when I began, but I hope you have a wonderful Shabbat. One of my favorite memories when I visited Israel was attending some Shabbat dinners, and oh my gosh, the food is absolutely incredible. So have an extra serving of Shabbat dinner for me. The major. In the West, it's a factor of deliberately degraded education mixed in with deliberate propaganda of the Yuri Bezmenov variety. Major, you're 100% accurate on that. What we are seeing right now is a result of, at least for the past 20 years, I've seen this growing trend of enabling like Islamic radicalist ideology, and even Ayaan is now about to start calling it out.
Shielded from the world I was born and raised in my early 20s, but most of those audiences are no longer shielded from the third world. In some ways, we have become the third world. If you look at things like the civic tension in Europe and even in America, the polarization, the exposure of women and children to harm and exploitation, the poverty, the dislocation, whether voluntary or compelled, the religious fanaticism, war, or the threats of war, be it civil or a foreign invasion, all these things are now going on in France, in the United Kingdom, in Germany, in Sweden, in Belgium, and in other places. So number one, it is immigration, invasive, transformative, and mostly Muslim.
Did you hear that? She's talking about immigration. So she's talking about how mass immigration plays a role in the rising anti-Semitism and Islamism in Western countries.
Second, the internet and new technologies have made it a lot easier to propagate anti-Semitism. The video I showed you now was on Twitter, for the Twitter X, formerly Twitter. For the millennial and Gen Z generations, modern technology has given them the opportunity to be both passive consumers of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and Israelophobia, and active participants as content creators. They can generate fresh content all the time, and it doesn't have to meet any standards of veracity.
That's so true. And unfortunately, a lot of people get their information from TikTok or Instagram. And like she just said, like there's no standards there, right? Like no one has any sort of journalistic standard that they have to maintain. Anyone can just post anything, right, about whatever they want, and other people take it as fact, right? It's almost as if like the more likes or views your video gets, people kind of look at that as, okay, this must be true because it has X amount of likes, right? Which is completely false, right? We have to remember there's a lot of bots out there. And plus, I mean, a lot of these are in echo chambers as well. So, but I do find that that's become a very fascinating phenomenon where, someone can put out something that's completely factually incorrect, but yet by virtue of it having a lot of, let's say, likes or retweets or whatever the case might be, other people will automatically assume that it's true and accurate, right? And that is a big problem with how disinformation and misinformation campaigns are successful.
Paradoxically, the growing education levels of many Muslims in the West has actually accelerated the hatred for Jews and for Israel in particular. The democratization of information has unleashed the creativity, the imagination of many Muslims to devote untold hours of their time, paid and voluntary, to advancing the most disgusting, false, libelous, and horrific lies about Jews and Israel.
She's the one saying this about Muslim students, not me, guys. She's the one saying it.
They dusted off copies of the Nazi and European literature on anti-Semitism and reimagined it for our time. Today, when the narrative of colonialism is considered the greatest sin of human history, Israel is accused of being the ultimate colonial project. Third, the global Islamist project to revive the caliphate that was abolished in 1924 is now headquartered in the West. After the so-called Arab Spring, when one after the other of
Do you know why it's headquartered in the West, guys? Do you remember that video that I shared with you? Let me pull it up because I should probably have this video like just bookmarked on my YouTube channel. But here, she's not joking when she says that the headquarters for, recreating this global Islamic caliphate is in the West. And if you've seen my previous live streams, right, you'll probably know exactly where I'm going to go with this. So here is the foreign affairs minister for the United Arab Emirates. And in 2017, he's actually warning Westerners, right? He's saying that you guys have to be careful because there's going to come a time when radical Islam is going to be coming out of your countries because you don't know how to deal with it. You don't know how to call it out. Listen to this, guys.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Did you catch that? So, like almost 10 years ago, the foreign affairs minister of the United Arab Emirates was warning Westerners, saying there's going to come a time when radical Islamic terrorism is going to be coming out of your countries because you guys will not know how to deal with radical Islam, and you're going to be too afraid of calling it out because if you do, they're going to accuse you of Islamophobia, right? Right? So this was the warning from 10 years ago, and now that's exactly what Ayaan Hirsi Ali just
autocratic
said,
Arab.
right? So let's go back a little bit because she just said it's headquartered out of the West now.
1924 is now headquartered in the 1920 colonial project. Third, the global Islamist project to revive the caliphate that was abolished in 1924 is now headquartered in the West. After the so-called...
Sorry, before I continue, I just want to give a quick note to the Jew haters in my comments. If, I try to ignore your comments, but I find it hilarious when you guys actually put a starred message out there and then you expect me to put it up. Absolutely not. If you want to waste your money on my channel, that's fine, but I'm never going to platform your anti-Semitic Jew hate starred messages. So, I mean, I guess that was what, like $2 well spent or something. But I mean, don't be stupid, guys. This is 100% a pro-Israel channel. This is a pro-Zionist channel. I'm Yisrael Chai. I love Israel. I love Jews. I think the two-state solution is Israel and Jordan. So, if I had any say in it, I just think that, Gaza and Judea and Samaria should just go back to Israel. That's my perspective on it. And, nothing and no one can ever change that. So, yeah, if you want to bash Israel, go somewhere else because this is not the channel for it. We love Jews here.
Arab Spring, when one after the other of the autocratic Arab governments were toppled, this was around 2010, 2011, they were toppled by popular uprisings. Those Arab governments that survived the intended revolution understood the role Islamists played in inspiring and organizing the unrest. The grassroots Muslim Brotherhood, in particular, often secretly working with the Iranian government, was rightly seen as...
Oh, I hate when they say the Iranian government. It was the Islamic Republic occupying Iran, right? So say the Islamic government, not the Iranian government. That's just my one frustration with all these people, right? Because when they say the Iranian government, they assume that it's like us. But I mean, when people are talking about Hezbollah, they don't call it like Lebanon or Lebanese, right? They call it out for what it is. So I just wish people would make that distinction, because the problem in the Middle East is not the Iranian government. It's not Iranians. The problem in the Middle East is the Islamic Republic that is occupying Iran, right? The Islamic Republic occupied my country in 1979. Prior to 1979, Iranians, this is a real flag of Iran, by the way, not that like Allahu Akbar jihadi flag that the Arabs put on our flag. So this is the real flag of Iran. And prior to 1979, Iran was one of the biggest allies of the United States. And Iran was also one of the biggest allies of Israel. It was only when the Islamic Republic took over Iran, right? This whole concept of Islamism here that you see in the title, right? So it was when Islamism took over Iran, turned it into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law, that the problem began, right? So the problem is not Iranians or Iran, it's the Islamic Republic. I just wish that she would make that difference. I know you guys know the difference in the distinction there, but you know, a lot of people don't. So I do want to point that out. And oh, we have a new member, Mr. K. Thank you for becoming a member. Make sure you check out our members only message board, where I post a lot of stuff there. And you know, we also have behind the scenes conversations, and I also get your feedback on what kind of things that you would like me to post or talk about. And I always, you know, like to get people's feedback there. For those of you who are watching, if you are enjoying this live stream, I encourage you to become a member as well. Just a small way that you can support me and help me get the word out there, so that together we can fight the Islamists and the jihadis. And of course, fight anti-Semitism together, because that is a big problem there. All right, let us continue.
The culprit. In response, the Muslim Brotherhood and all other Islamist groups and individuals suspected of mutiny were banned, imprisoned, defunded, evicted by the Arab governments that either hosted them or tolerated them in the past. Many of those Islamists relocated to the West, where they found a warm welcome within the ranks of the existing Islamist bases. In Europe, and even in America now, we have extensive networks of mosques, Muslim schools, Islamic societies, public relations councils, student associations, law firms, political and policy networks, all working incrementally towards their stated goal of conquering the West through non-violent means, and of course, in the process, defaming Israel, Zionism, and
so the non-violent means, guys, that's civilizational jihad, right? That's what Bridget Gabriel was speaking about.
Reviving the anti-Semitism we all thought was defeated. Fourth,
let me actually pull that up again. So I've shared it with you before, but let me pull it up again, right? So what Ayaan Hirsi Ali is referring to is that the Muslim Brotherhood plan, right? Here, I found the video. I found the video for you guys. So let's watch this, because now, you know, she might, like Ayaan Hirsi Ali just probably glosses over it. But here.
Plan for I am holding in my hand the Muslim Brotherhood plan for the destruction of the United States, written 5/22/1991. The title of the plan is مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية.
She is Lebanese, by the way.
You all got that? There will be a quiz. It is titled the Muslim Brotherhood, an explanatory memorandum for the general strategic goal for the group, the Muslim Brotherhood in North America, written 5/22/1991. This plan was presented as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terrorism trial ever in the history of the United States, where our government handed down, hello, my best friend, where our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts for Muslim Americans and Muslim American organizations raising money to support terrorist organizations in the Middle East to the tune of millions. And I'm just going to read you a paragraph of this plan, so it'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about. They talk about the settlement in the United States. And I have to put my glasses on because God in his wisdom decided I turned 49 and I needed reading glasses. Wait until I get to heaven. I'm convinced he's a man. If he was a woman, he would know I would look better without glasses. Understanding the role of the Muslim brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brothers, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Is this clear? They don't mince words, do they? But the most important page of this document is the last page. Because in the last page, they list 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States with the specific goal of sabotaging America from within and destroying America by our own hands. And I'm just going to name a few. Number one on the list is ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. And if you're familiar with ISNA, it's because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. So we not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House dictating policy in the ear of the president. Number two on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republicans combined. Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust. The North American Islamic Trust owns the deed to over 90% of American mosques in the United States. That is a problem. Now, what makes this very important, and I'm going to focus in the last 5 minutes on education, is to show you how they set up every organizations in this plan to destroy America, focusing on every sector of our society. Organizations focused on publishing, organization focused on media, organization focused on education, with the strict purpose of doing sabotage to America from within. And I'm not talking military. We know that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all the others want to attack the United States and do damage to the United States. As a matter of fact, we in the United States have 150 terrorist organizations right now operating in America. 5 of them are operating right here in the District of Columbia. And our government, and these are the ones we know about.
There you go, guys. So going back to what Ayaan Hirsi Ali said about, this, how they're operating within the United States, this is what she's referring to. And, again, so Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she's from Somalia. Bridget Gabriel is from Lebanon. I'm from Iran, right? we all have the same message. We're all giving you the same exact warning. Probably because we know something, right? We know something, we've seen the signs, and we're trying to warn you. All right, let's go back to Ayaan's.
Islamists capitalize.
So I want to go back a little bit so we can listen to that part again, okay?
Or tolerated them in the past. Many of those Islamists relocated to the West, where they found a warm welcome within the ranks of the existing Islamist bases. In Europe, and even in America now, we have extensive networks of mosques, Muslim schools, Islamic societies, public relations councils, student associations, law firms, political and policy networks, all working incrementally towards their stated goal of conquering the West through non-violent means, and of course, in the process, defaming Israel, Zionism, and reviving the anti-Semitism we all thought was defeated.
Right? It's not a conspiracy, guys. It's true. It's 100% true.
Fourth, the Islamists capitalized on the creedal crisis underway in the West, the crisis of Christianity, the crisis of liberalism, and more so the progressive end of the liberal spectrum, where we now have an unholy alliance of progressives and Islamists openly colluding to dismantle Western structures and demonizing Jews.
For those of you who've watched my live streams where I go over documentaries about the 1979 Islamic Republic, you'll be familiar with this. So this unholy alliance is not something new. This is actually what happened in 1979 as well. So the communists and the progressives, right, they actually supported the Islamists in overthrowing the Shah of Iran and, you know, taking control of the country. And then they turned the country into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law. So, you know, communism and you know, progressivism, I guess, they share a similar sort of anti-Western imperialist ideology that the Islamists do, right? Of course, that's where their similarities end, right? But when it comes to the anti-imperialist rhetoric, that's why you see a lot of these like socialist, Marxist, you know, even like woke lefty progressives, you know, they're all siding with Hamas and Islamic terrorists for two reasons. One, of course, for the, you know, anti-imperialism aspect of it, but also because there is an element on the far left that is incredibly anti-Semitic. Just, of course, you know, just like there is an element on the far right that's anti-Semitic, but no one really talks about that anti-Semitic element on the far left, and it is incredibly prevalent.
I recommend you read David L. Bernstein's book, Woke Antisemitism, How a Progressive Ideology Harms Jews.
Did I not just say that there's an element of anti-Semitism on the, you know, extreme left? Okay, so there's a book. I'm going to write this down. I'm going to have to look into that. Woke anti-Semitism. Okay. There we go. Oh, thank you, John. I appreciate that. I hope you're enjoying the live stream. All right, guys. So the book she recommended was called Woke Anti-Semitism. I'm definitely going to order that and read it. And I'll let you know if it's worth reading. Of course, if Ayaan is recommending it, I would strongly suggest everyone get that book.
America, the language of victimhood, developed by radical Marxists, supposedly to expose the oppression of Black American descendants of slavery, concepts such as systemic oppression, intersectionality, and the binary division of society into oppressors and oppressed was superimposed on American Jews. Jews are now whites, they're privileged, they're Zionist, and they're supporters of an oppressor colonial state. Hamas, on the other hand, in progressive circles, is a resistance movement bravely committed to fighting for the liberation of a beleaguered, colonized Palestinian people trapped in an open-air prison and subjected to systematic bombings in order to bring about their genocide. The Hamas rallies you saw on American and other Western campuses in the spring last year, and that continue often to this day, dressed up as pro-Palestinian protests, are the culmination of more than 2 or even maybe 3 decades of cultivation in education and media institutions in the West. Fifth, and finally, I want to...
So that is a very, very good point. Like what you're seeing right now didn't happen overnight. 2 generations, possibly 3. It's very similar to what happened in 1979 in Iran. Guys, the Islamic Revolution didn't happen overnight. It took 2 or 3 generations, right? Like for those of you who watched the documentaries with me, I know most of the mods and members have, Khomeini, Khabar Margesh, he actually tried to impose Sharia law on Iran in 1941, and he failed. So from 1941 up until 1979, he was basically, building up, indoctrinating people, convincing people, right? So that it took almost 40 years, right? It took almost 40 years for the evil demonic Ayatollahs to be successful in taking Iran from a modern, thriving, secular country into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law, right? So these things don't happen overnight. It's not like people one day just wake up and just, believe a certain way. So take this warning very seriously, because, it's the same thing. It's the same thing, right? And many of us who've experienced this sort of radicalism, that's why we're calling it out, right? Like, these young people, they didn't just wake up one day and decide that Hamas are resistance and freedom fighters, right? They have been indoctrinated. So there's obviously this element of there's this prevailing narrative that is already ingrained in the conversation when it comes to Middle Eastern politics, that is promoting the radical Islamist perspective. And it has already become so normalized that these young people who can't even point out Israel on a map, right, are dressing up like Islamic terrorists and, chanting about like intifada and jihad and, like all that nonsense, right? Like this is deliberate. This is by design.
Touch on the great realignment underway in the West. The political and ideological landscape that used to be based on class and religion on a spectrum from left to right has become meaningless. Today, the prevailing division is one between those perceived to be the elites, that is, political elites, religious elites, economic elites, urban, bureaucratic, and the legacy media, versus the working and middle classes, the rural communities, those who attend the churches or synagogues and get their information from alternative sources. In America, it's President Trump and the MAGA movement he founded that is now a coalition of former prominent Democrats, whites, working class, middle and rural classes, Hispanics, blacks, and a major chunk of women. The moderate Democrats are struggling to recapture their party from the progressives led by Bernie Sanders and the very colorful women that make up the squad. In Europe, the establishment parties on both the center-left and the center-right have...
I love how, like, just the disdain in her voice when she talks about the squad, like, you can just tell exactly what Ayaan thinks about those people. Rashida and Ilhan and AOC and those people
have lost the credibility they once had. Voters are going in droves to the populist parties. Some of these parties, as in France and Belgium, had anti-Semitic elements in the past and may still do. But this has changed as I see more and more Jewish voters either considering or openly supporting them. Given these 5 elements of mass migration, the age of the internet, including AI, the headquartering of Islamism in the West, and the creedal crisis in the West, in particular of liberalism and the Great Realignment, I think we must reassess the existing strategies for fighting anti-Semitism. Strategies that were successful in the past, but are now obsolete or worse, counterproductive. What are we getting wrong? I think, number one, what we are getting wrong is we are underestimating the Islamists. The war on terror blinded us to the other methods of asymmetric warfare they apply, like subversion, like alliance building, like propaganda, like weaponizing victimhood and minority status. We've underestimated their weaponization of Muslim demographics, eternally waiting for that silent Muslim majority to stand up and reject Islamism openly. We've underestimated their conviction and devotion to their faith and the revival of the caliphate. And in fact, their most important commitment, which is this that they state so openly, the annihilation of the Jews. We've also underestimated how incredibly resourceful they are in raising money. They raise money from Qatar. They raise money through zakat and alms. They raise money through these generous welfare states that have welcomed them into the West. And we also underestimate it and don't fully understand how other states support them. And I'm talking about the Islamists are supported, for instance, by the government of Turkey. Turkey is a member of NATO, by the government of Qatar. And that Qatar has presented itself to us as a mediator of sorts, but is in fact colluding with the Islamists. Yep. What are we getting wrong? We're also getting wrong, and this again is part of that.
That's a big problem, guys. Like, Qatar has bought out so many people in DC. Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about Qatar in future episodes. So, make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel so that you catch my future shows, because I am working on Qatar. That's a big one. And the Turkish government, like Erdogan is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Like, we all know that, right? Yeah.
Imperial crisis is that the Judeo-Christian foundations, I think what we did was we threw the baby out with the bathwater. We thought we were going to shear Christianity of its sharp edges, but in fact we threw the whole thing out, and I think we are living to regret it. Another baby that was thrown out with the bathwater is the nation state. Concepts like cultural pluralism, multiculturalism, and other progressive ideas masquerading as protections for minorities have had a corrosive effect on national identity and especially on social cohesion. 100%. We underestimated the rise of wokeism, social justice warriors' capture of the institutions of education has been catastrophic here in America, and it is even worse in Europe, if possible. What should we do now to fight this resurgence of the oldest hatred in humanity? I want to end with a statement attributed to the former chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He said that anti-Semitism is often a symptom of a national crisis, explaining that anti-Semitism frequently emerges as a warning sign of deeper dysfunction within a society, particularly during times of crisis. He argued that societies facing economic, political, or social instability often channel their anxieties and frustrations into scapegoating Jews, using them as a convenient target for blame. He reminded us that the hate that begins with Jews never ends with Jews. Today's anti-Semitism is not just a symptom of a national crisis, it is a symptom of a civilizational crisis. And what we need to do is to draw the proper lessons from the history that led to the Holocaust. If we fail to do this, I fear that it's not just the Jews who will be led to their slaughter. And now I want to open it up for questions.
That was a very, very good speech. I'm definitely going to include the link to this video in the YouTube description after I'm done my live stream. That was excellent. That was so good.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're getting to the Q&A.
Thank you for your talk. I'm Emma. You talk about how we've cleared or softened Christianity of its hard edges. I just wanted you to expand on that. And since we've had so many lectures, well, 2 lectures about the Antichrist, is it about we've lost this powerful narrative and now we've lost our way and a new narrative has come in to shape everything?
I think everything is relational. And if you compare the conviction displayed by the Islamists in terms of their faith in Islam and the foundational documents and the man who founded Islam, Muhammad, and you ask yourself, can we offset that with an alien creed that is coming in? We can't. We've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We have said that it was possible after the Enlightenment to base our societies purely on concepts like secularism and liberalism. We've unwittingly then brought about generations that do not understand the moral foundations of their own societies. I was appalled last spring when I found students attending the highest educational institutions the West has to offer. This is the University of Harvard, the University of Penn, the University of Columbia, and it moved on to the University of Oxford and Cambridge. It's in these places where young people were openly supporting Hamas. That tells you that's a generation that is struggling with the effort to tell the difference between right and wrong. Now, for them,
it's so true. I mean, for those of us who are from the Middle East, there's no question as to who is right and who is wrong, right? Like Hamas are clearly Islamic terrorists, and yet, even to this day, there are these young people who will attack people like me, and they think they know better than me what's going on in the Middle East. And like they legitimately believe that Hamas are freedom fighters. And like I just kind of have to take a step back, and I have to think to myself, like, at some point we something in our society must have gone horribly wrong for people who have no ties or no connection to the Middle East look at Islamic terrorists and ignore their gut feelings about right and wrong, and throw it out there that these are resistance fighters or freedom fighters, right? I mean, it almost makes me wonder, like, what would have happened? Like, how would these people have reacted if 9/11 happened today? I feel like their worldview has been so twisted, and their worldview has been so corrupted by this Islamist narrative that if, God forbid, like if 9/11 happened today, these people would probably be on the side of the hijackers, right? They would probably be like, well, we deserved it because colonial, or I don't know, right? I mean, that's how insane these people sound when they say that they think Hamas are resistance or freedom fighters, right? Like, something in our society has gone horribly wrong for these young people to think this way today.
America is founded on, and then so is Britain, all these other countries. They borrowed, they established institutions that were inspired by Christianity and Christian morality in particular. And by rejecting Christianity, by debasing it, by mocking it, by kicking.
Thank you, Patriot, for gifting memberships to the channel. I really appreciate that. And Dateslov says, keep fighting. We are just getting started. I hope you are enjoying the live stream and enjoying my channel. Welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I go live Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12 noon Eastern, talk about the pressing issues of the day with respect to Islamic terrorism, the Middle East, politics. And today we're going over Ayaan's speech, Ayaan Hirsi's speech. If you missed the beginning, make sure that when my live stream is done, you go back, start from the beginning. For those of you who are asking for the video link, I will post it in the description of my live stream. When the live stream is over, I will put the link there so you can go back and watch it on your own as well. Highly recommended to watch this.
Taking it out of the public space, I think we've deprived young people of their moral sources, and it's been a huge mistake.
All right, let's go back.
And we create wrong. Now, for them, America is founded on, and then so is Britain, all these other countries. They borrowed, they established institutions that were inspired by Christianity and Christian morality in particular. And by rejecting Christianity, by debasing it, by mocking it, by kicking it out of the public space, I think we've deprived young people of their moral sources, and it's been a huge mistake. And we created a vacuum. And in that vacuum have come wokeism, social justice. You know, these are kids who really want to change the world and do good things. And that is, it's the progressives who are capitalizing on that. And when I say the progressives, I mean the woke in particular, because they've presented a new religion. And along, of course, with the Islamists, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the West. And that is because Christianity has been subdued, not by Muslims, but by Christians.
Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. My name is Ben. I've noticed an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, especially among conservatives and the far right. They like to point out that AIPAC owns our government, or that the state of Israel, the fact that we give them arms and support them so much in their wars against these terrible Arab states, that this means that we're being controlled by Jews. I just want to know, like, what's your general take on this? And is there a way to, like, stop this from happening, especially among the right?
To answer your question, let me illustrate it with my own. I was socialized into hating Jews. I used to hate them. I used to think they were monsters. I didn't think they looked human. So I was completely immersed. And this happened at home, and it happened in the mosque, and it happened at school, and so on. And then I came to the Netherlands. And
I do have to appreciate her honesty and bravery in calling out the Jew hatred. And she doesn't mince words, right? Like she has written about it several times, how like even within, I guess, her mosque, the mosque that she attended, they were going on and on about, Jew hate and things like that. So guys, like Jew hate is very much institutionalized in certain cultures and in certain societies. Those that are, predominantly overtaken by Islam. Jew hate, thankfully, is not predominant in Iran, because again, like we Iranians, we've resisted that Islamic colonization. And again, like prior to 1979, aside from Israel, Iran was the only other safe country for Jews. So prior to the 1979 Islamic coup d'etat, there were over 100,000 Jews who lived in Iran. Many of them actually were Jews who had escaped other Arabic countries, from persecution, especially Iraq, right? So we used to have a lot of Iraqi Jews in Iran. And then after the Islamic Republic came and turned our country into a 7th century Islamic hellhole, Jews there were, of course, targeted and attacked. And I believe the Jewish population in occupied Iran right now is around 10,000. So 90,000 Iranian Jews escaped Iran. Many of them went to Israel. But so like that Jew hatred that she's talking about doesn't really exist in Iranian society. Of course, those who are Islamists and who are like extreme radicals, yes, of course. And our government, it's not our government, the occupying Islamic Republic is the most anti-Semitic, Jew-hating Islamic dictatorship out there. They have tried to indoctrinate us Iranians for 47 years. It hasn't worked. I have, other live streams where I talk about this. And so again, like that Jew hate isn't really something that's part of our culture as Iranians, because our history as Iranians goes back thousands of years to like before Islam was even invented. Like 3,000 years ago, Cyrus the Great, freed the Jews from their Babylonian enslavement, took them back to the Promised Land, helped them rebuild the Second Temple in Jerusalem. So Iranians and Jews do have that shared history, which is why, in our authentic Iranian culture, right? Like I'm not talking about Islamic culture, but in our Iranian culture, Jew hate doesn't exist. In fact, freedom of religion is one of the core foundations of the Persian Empire 2,500 years ago. But having said that, there are a lot of Islamic communities, again, her words, not mine, where Jew hatred is institutionalized. And so she, she does actually talk about that here, right? So she's talking about her lived experience. Let's go back a little bit here.
From happening, especially among the right.
To answer your question, let me illustrate it with my own. I was socialized into hating Jews. I used to hate them. I used to think they were monsters. I didn't think they looked human. So I was completely immersed. And this happened at home, and it happened in the mosque, and it happened at school, and so on. And then I came to the Netherlands. And fortunately for me, I attended the University of Leiden just as the Europeans were going through their reckoning of what they had done to their fellow Jewish citizens. And I thank that as my re-education. A few years later, when I went into parliament in 2003, there were groups of Muslims who said they didn't want to be a part of this education on the Holocaust, the memorialization of what happened, this reckoning. They said they weren't a part of it. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. And the mistake country after country made was to say, well, in that case, it's not mandatory anymore. I think in Germany, officially, it's still mandatory, but it's outsourced to NGOs. And with that, I think, came a rise in, I don't know if you remember, you are too young to remember this, but some of the older people here will remember.
I find it absolutely crazy that there were Muslim groups who were complaining about Holocaust education, right? I mean, the reason that they are complaining about it is because, they want Holocaust denial, I guess, right? Like they want to deny what happened. But I think Holocaust education should be mandatory for everyone all around the world.
The nasty campaign against the canon Western canon as white, male, and pale and stale. And Jesse Jackson shouting all over the place, Western Civ must go, ho, ho, yo, ho, whatever, Western Civ must go. Now, I think a consequence of that has been that there is now a generation that doesn't know what led up to the Holocaust, that are not educated, that these tropes, this scapegoating, this story, that these stupid narratives that Jews control the world, they don't see, they can't look at it critically because they haven't been taught, they haven't been exposed. And that is the generation after me. I was going to school in the 1990s up to the 2000s, and this politicization of the curriculum and this capture of the curriculum by the woke, along with some of the Islamists, that is occurring in the 2010s up to now. And so I think we're now seeing a generation that's come off with degrees in funny subjects like gender studies and Black studies and liberation studies and intersectionality and so on. And they can't tell the difference between right and wrong. And they believe in this nonsense. And it's dangerous nonsense.
I agree. Thank you.
I love how she's also calling out like all these useless degrees and useless courses, like gender studies and intersectionality, right? Like it's such utter nonsense. Like, I mean, how do I even like, let me put it this way. Why is it that like these weird woke leftists in Western countries who, why do they feel like they know better than the rest of us? And why do they get to impose their woke progressive ideology on the rest of us, right? I mean, so if I was going to identify myself using, their labeling, I guess, right? Like, okay, I'm a visible minority, Middle East, woman, immigrant, right? I don't have white privilege, none of that. But I don't complain about this stuff, right? Like this, she's absolutely right. Like this whole, these studies of like intersectionality or gender studies or whatever, I feel like these have actually made our society more divisive, because I feel like these narratives and these ideologies are necessarily creating otherness, right? Like at a time when we should be, we should work towards viewing each other as equal. There are people out there who are saying that, no, we're not equal and people should be treated differently based on whatever, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. And then, like it's gone so far that I've actually heard non-white people just flat out say with full confidence, right? They just come out and they say white people can't experience racism. And I'm like, what? Right? But like this is how far they've been indoctrinated, and this is how far the insanity has gone with a lot of these sort of woke progressive narratives.
So while there was an uptick in restoring Jewish identity since October 7th, the fear of representing ourselves through observance of our rituals or wearing a Magen David has pervaded. We often seek a safe haven in assimilation, and we're also afraid of calling out anti-Semitism for what it is. That dirtier word is often replaced with anti-Zionism or Holocaust denial. And so should we assume that this is another trend, maybe like BLM, and not wait until the mainstream forgets anti-Semitism, or should we see this as a more permanent thing, and how do we respond?
That's a great question. And let me start with how you end by saying, please do not think that this is another fad that will pass. I think it would be a lethal mistake for all of us to do it, and especially for Jewish communities. It's not going to pass, number one. Number two, I understand and I listen and follow intensely conversations within Jewish communities where they say, well, at least now, as opposed to the 1930s, we have a home and we can go to Israel. And I think that that is A, giving up, and B, if you look at the scale and the scope and the intensity of the hatred that the Islamists have created, and not just Islamists, it used to be Muslim governments. The only difference is Islamists drive their followers to act, whereas the Muslim governments propagated the anti-Jewish propaganda in order to create, to keep their populations apathetic. But the intensity, the scale, and the scope of this hatred is something that you cannot underestimate. And it has shifted, as I said, it's imported now. It's no longer constrained to the Muslim countries of the past. It's here in America, it's all over the West. And it has resuscitated and given permission to the other anti-Semitisms, the European anti-Semitism, but don't forget the Soviet anti-Semitism. It's given permission to all of these anti-Semitisms to come back. And so I think now is the moment. It's one of the most serious, if not the most serious, problems that we are seeing. If we want to prevent another Holocaust from happening, we should not treat this as a fad. We should take it very, very seriously.
Thank you.
I have a very basic question, I think. Basically, what do we do about it? You alluded to it a little bit as far as like we need to do something different.
Yes.
But also you mentioned that it seems that what converted you was Holocaust education, or like seeing what the problems are kind of firsthand with anti-Semitism, the problems with anti-Semitism. And that seems like what the old approach was. So why isn't that effective, and what should we be doing?
If we reassess the old approach, we're going to find that there were things that actually worked. The mandatory education on the lead up to the Holocaust and how populations became complicit. In my classroom, some of my professors said, what we did to the Jews wasn't just to annihilate them or to hurt them or to send them to camps. He said it debased us as human beings. It put us in a moral crisis of our own. And he was talking about all of Europe. I think in that sense, by reassessing it, we have to go back to say, who are we? What is our identity? Are we people who will repeat that one more time? even if it happens in the name of Islam? No. So I think reassess what we did right, and then now look at what we have done and some of the effects and how it hasn't been helpful. I think part of these, say, cultural pluralism and multiculturalism, etc., these were philosophies that were actually developed in some ways to accommodate the differentness of like how Jews are distinct, so that they can, as a minority group, they can keep their rituals and their identity and still be a part of the wider society. And these philosophies were also applied to the Native Americans, maybe to a certain extent Black Americans, because multiculturalism comes with exemptions, and it comes with exceptions for the law and affirmative action and a whole constellation of things that at one time, before globalization, before mass immigration, before the challenge of Islamism, these things sounded and seemed to be good and effective and inclusive. That's not the case anymore. So we've got to throw that out. We've got to start understanding that now we can form alliances with the individuals, the organizations, even the nations that are alienated and are targeted by the Islamists. In Europe, for instance, it's the white working class that is hard-pressed by the upsurge in immigration, but also through Islamism. It's their neighborhoods, their schools, their social welfare benefits. These are large communities that are resisting that. And when they resist this, they're called far-right, they're called racist, they're called extremist. They're not. They're responding to the changes that are occurring in the same way that, say, some of the Jewish neighborhoods are responding. They're appalled, and anything they say, they're told they're Islamophobes. So I think part of it is reassessing that aspect of minority protection and understanding that the Islamists are abusing these kindnesses. This is why I said we only focus on.
Did you catch that part where she said the Islamists are abusing the kindness, right? Because Islamists, they will, that's what they do. Like, they take advantage. They push the limits of people's tolerance, right?
Of minority protection and understanding that the Islamists are abusing these kindnesses. This is why I said we only focus on terrorism and fighting terrorism, but terror is a tactic, and it's only one of many tactics of subversive warfare. And I think we should look at the real subversion, the language they use, the indoctrination, etc. So we have to wise up. We are behind them. They're using abuse of propaganda, the development of the concept of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is presented as if it is exactly the same thing as anti-Semitism. We know the history of anti-Semitism in Europe that led to the Holocaust, but there's never been a Holocaust against Muslims. Islam is not an ethnicity. It is not.
The amount of times that I get called a racist for speaking out about radical Islam, it's wild to me. Like, it blows my mind. Yeah, like, she's absolutely correct here.
Jewish neighborhoods are responding. They're appalled, and anything they say, they're told they're Islamophobes. So I think part of it is reassessing that aspect of minority protection and understanding that the Islamists are abusing these kindnesses. This is why I said we only focus on terrorism and fighting terrorism, but terror is a tactic.
I wrote this down because this is, like, what she says is important. Like, so she says terror is a tactic, and it's just one of the many tactics of subversion, right? So it's not just about the terrorism aspect, it's about all the other ways that the Islamists and the jihadis are infiltrating your societies, right?
And it's only one of many tactics of subversive warfare. And I think we should look at the real subversion, the language they use, the indoctrination, etc. So we have to wise up. We are behind them. their use and abuse of propaganda, the development of the concept of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is presented as if it is exactly the same thing as anti-Semitism. We know the history of anti-Semitism in Europe that led to the Holocaust, but there's never been a Holocaust against Muslims. Islam is not an ethnicity. It is not, Muslims are made up of, they say 1.5 to 1.8 billion. And in fact, in some ways, they are a majority. And if you want to play with the numbers, in Europe, for every one Jew, there are 36 Muslims. So who's the minority here? And in the US, we're not that far behind. Right now, in the US, Jewish populations are more official, according to the official numbers, than Muslim numbers. But these numbers are changing because of more immigration, because of the birth rates that are asymmetrical. So I think we've got to wise up, and we've got to, and here's why it's so important to recapture these schools, institutions of education. UATX, where I can come and give this talk. I can't give this talk in any other university in the United States without having people protest. And threaten. And finally, the final thing I want to say is, let's also consider the message. So we've been talking a lot about the medium, but the message of the Islamists, if you dig deep into it, it's a message of death. They shout, we believe in death, and you believe in life. So when you look at what Israel is fighting for, what the Jews are fighting for, it is life. And that message of life, that should be easier to sell, even to Muslims, than they are. But we're not competing, because they applied the propaganda that if we dissect what they're saying and we share that with the larger public, we're committing Islamophobia. So we're engaged in self-censorship. And
right? And this happened at the beginning, guys. Remember, like, she was playing some clips from memory with all those like Islamic jihadis and the things they were saying. And then all of a sudden the chat went wild, and people even in the chat were like, oh, you're Islamophobic, right? Just because we're literally calling out their jihadi ideology.
we've got to get rid of all of that.
Could I just ask a quick follow-up? So it seems that much of what you're saying is that multiculturalism is not working anymore. We need to not do that. But if we got rid of multiculturalism, where would the Jews be? Like, how would that work? And perhaps the answer is that it's multiculturalism for everyone except the Islamists, but that also doesn't sit quite right.
The condemnation of nationalism, when we were reckoning with the lead up to the Holocaust and reflecting on that time, there was that German nationalism of blood and soil, and the Jews were accused of racial impurity. That ethno-nationalism is bad and wrong, and we must continue to condemn that. But that can't be the only aspects of nationalism. There are very positive nationalisms where we have a constitution and the rule of law, and we are all equal before the rule of law, no exceptions, no exemptions. In the United Kingdom now, there is a sentencing committee that is determined to have crime, the exact same crime committed by different individuals. If you're of an ethnic minority, you're going to get leniency, but if you are a white heterosexual male, you're going to get the full extent of that punishment. That is taking a wrecking ball to the system, to the nation state. So what unifies us, what makes me an American? I love America. It's the Constitution. It's what I have in common with you. So I'll say, let's end multiculturalism, let's end diversity and all of that nonsense, and insist on our unity as human beings as first, and the constitutions and laws that protect that.
I support that 100%. I mean, I think diversity is good when we're talking about, I don't know, like different kinds of food and, you know, different styles of music and, you know, different, you know, clothes and things like that. But once you get into like the diversity of ideologies, that's when it becomes a problem, right? Because now all of a sudden you have these Islamists who are coming to Western countries. They're taking advantage of, the concept of multiculturalism and diversity. And they're saying, well, in my culture, I think Jews are evil, right? In my culture, Israel is bad, right? Like that's how they are taking advantage of something that was supposed to be inherently good, and they've twisted it around, and they're now using it to push their Islamic jihad on the rest of us.
So just to clarify, that would be like allowing Jewish culture to exist, but not using like DEI to raise it above other cultures, and not using DEI to raise any one culture above others, like we're currently doing to some extent.
I think what I'm trying to say is we are
I think we need to get rid of DEI. DEI needs to go.
Multi-ethnic, and we've got multiple identities, but our national identity is one, and it must be one, and it must be treated as one if it is to work. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all these cosmetic, artificial instruments, if you read the literature and the philosophies out of which they come, these are subversive efforts to dismantle the West and Western structures. We have a merit-based system. And if I just got offered an amazing job, I read through all of the points and I want it, but I came to the conclusion, I can't do it. I don't have the skill set. But I could get it if I only insisted I was black and I was woman and I was this and I was that. That's a DEI. And if you eliminate meritocracy, then what makes this society different from all the other corrupt societies where people get to the top because of who they're related to and who they know and who their blood ties are with? And a society that decides to go down that path of giving positions of power and privilege and so on according to identity, that's a society that's going to not last for long. We wouldn't be able to compete with China. We wouldn't be able to compete with other countries, I'm afraid. So I think maybe we should say, let's learn from Israel. Israel as a nation state, I think it was Dan Senor who wrote that book, Startup Nation. That startup nation is flourishing. I was impressed. I was there last week on Tuesday, and I was impressed by, it was nearly midnight when I came from the airport, and there were young women.
Guys, who's been to Israel? Raise your hand. It was one of my best trips, one of my favorite times, like amazing trip. I was there for 2 weeks, wasn't long enough.
Walking the streets, alone, sometimes in pairs, sometimes more, almost at midnight in Jerusalem. And I remarked on it. I asked the driver, how is that possible? And he said, in Israel, women can walk the streets any time of night or day unaccompanied. They have nothing to fear.
Yep, that's true.
That is a nation state that honors the social contract between those who govern and those who are governed. Because the most important function.
It's actually so true. I've never felt more safe than when I was in Israel.
Of a government is to keep her citizens safe. And now in Europe and in America, sadly, girls are not safe. And Jews, I just told you, I mean, they're saying there's this impending doom. Our Jewish fellow citizens don't feel safe. That social contract is broken, and we better repair it quickly.
Thank you.
Hi, I wanted to say I loved your jacket, and I also wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Are there any lessons from your recent conversion to Christianity that might be applied to the West and the absence of Judeo-Christian values, and how might any lessons there help us combat anti-Semitism?
I get a lot of questions about my conversion to Christianity, and I always think, what if I didn't even exist?
Okay, so they introduced her as a Muslim woman, but I guess she must have recently converted to Christianity. Okay. I mean, that's the typical progress for, once people start realizing about, the indoctrination, I guess, most people sort of convert.
Let alone convert to Christianity. And I want to insist that the revival of Christianity, as in the teachings of Jesus Christ, the Sermon on the Mount, that those moral imperatives are what the West is built on. And I think it's very important that we revive those, especially for young people. I think the boomers, sorry if there are any boomers here, my criticism of the boomer generation is that they enjoyed the institutions that their forefathers fought for and died for, and then squandered it. And so I think we need a new generation now to revisit those principles and bring them back for the young.
And if I might ask a brief follow-up.
Just a quick note, Christianity is the fastest growing religion in occupied Iran right now. Less than 30% of Iranians identify as Muslim. Just wanted to throw that out there. Yeah, Christianity is the fastest growing, but it's all done underground because, of course, the punishment for leaving Islam is death, right? And so when you are stuck in a country that is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship, you have to pretend that you're Muslim. But less than 30% of Iranians are actually practicing Muslims. And I will share this one article with you because there's going to be people who are going to be like, oh, you're lying. It's not true. You don't know what's happening in Iran. Let me show this for you. So this is to basically, this is going to, counter the narrative that the Islamists and jihadis, love to put out there. So, yeah, for anyone who doesn't believe me that less than 30% of Iranians in occupied Iran are Muslim, and that Christianity is the fastest growing religion, here's an article, okay? So, senior cleric claims religion in Iran weak, 50,000 mosques closed, okay? So guys, this was 2 years ago in 2023, okay? So in 2023, right? So Mohammad Abul Qasim Dulabi, which چه اسمی داره این Mohammad Abul Qasim Dulabi. Anyways, Mohammad Abul Qasim Dulabi, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi's special representative in clerical affairs. So guys, this isn't like some random person, right? This is literally an Islamic cleric who is part of the Islamic dictatorship in Iran, okay? So this guy is part of the Islamic dictatorship that is occupying Iran, and he said 2 years ago, a senior Iranian cleric says around 50,000 of Iran's 75,000 mosques are closed, showing the declining numbers of Iranians attending. I can tell you that I have it on good fact that the primary reason that Iranians attend mosques in Iran, the ones that remain open, is because they're basically cleaner than public restrooms. So usually people go to mosques in Iran when they don't have access to a public restroom. Just wanted to put it out there. But yes, out of the 75,000 mosques in the country, 50,000 of them are shut down. So that means there's, and that, by the way, guys, that was 2 years ago in 2023. So I can only imagine the number has gone down even more. So yeah, the next time that, someone wants to tell you that, Iran is a Muslim country, no, Iran is a country that is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship, but less than 30% of Iranians are actually practicing Muslims, and 50,000 mosques out of 75,000 mosques have been shut down. Not my words, their own words. The Islamic clerics themselves are admitting that religion is weak and 50,000 mosques have shut down. So while mosques in your countries are popping up like weeds everywhere, right? It seems like every week there's a new mosque popping up somewhere. 50,000 mosques shut down in Iran. Ask yourselves why that is. All right. Let's go back to the video and continue the video. But there you go. There's a little anecdote about, Islam in Iran. And of course, Christianity being the fastest growing religion in occupied Iran, of course, Zoroastrianism is second.
As a former flag bearer for the New Atheist movement and as someone who's converted away from Islam, it seems like you are uniquely positioned to address this inflection point, given that, as outlined in your talk, it's these two forces in league with each other that are pushing anti-Semitism forward. So is there anything specifically in your conversion that we can all learn from?
What brought me to Christianity was I was brought low. It was a sense of humility. And one of my big beefs with my fellow atheists back then was we nurtured a sense of great arrogance. We thought we knew everything, and we had a disdain for people who believed and a disdain for the biblical legacy. And we thought that history started, let me speak for myself, history started with the Enlightenment. And I have come to realize that put your humble foot first before you condemn the principles and beliefs of others.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to reiterate the thanks for your time here at the University of Austin. What I wanted to ask you was, you speak of Islamophobia and classes like Black Studies as phony ideological things, but I was curious as to what makes them different. What makes white supremacy different, or like Islamophobia so different from anti-Semitism, as there, we did import many African slaves that died in the millions, and so did South American countries even more so. We did force Native Americans on forced marches and genocide. There are Muslims being massacred in China today. So what makes anti-Semitism so different?
Two things. One is we have reckoned in America and in Western European countries, we've had a great reckoning with our past. We've addressed the fact that we engaged in slavery, we fought a war, we ended it. We had segregation, we had another major fight, we ended it. We had the civil rights movement. We brought women out of, and by the way, in fighting for all of those emancipations, the people who were heading these fights were constantly quoting from the Bible. They were believing Christians and they were inspired by their Christianity. So number one, we had that reckoning. Number two, anti-Semitism is the oldest hatred in humanity, and you find it, believe it or not, across the entire world. What made the West different after they nearly exterminated their Jews was to have that honest look in the mirror and reckon with what they did. And then those campaigns to end it. Islamophobia is a made-up word. It's made up by a political movement that wants to exploit and capitalize on white guilt to achieve its end goal, which is the revival of the caliphate. And the revival of the caliphate is to
Guys, this is exactly why like the Islamist groups in Canada, like the National Council of Canadian Muslims, accused me of Islamophobia for speaking out against anti-Semitism and radical Islam, right? Like they basically capitalized on this notion of white guilt. And yeah, they literally called a Middle Eastern woman who has experienced Islamic radicalism terrorism, and I was speaking out about it. They accused me of Islamophobia. So that just goes to show you how meaningless the word is, and how it's just basically been something that is, like she said, it's literally being weaponized by the Islamists to capitalize on your white guilt so that they can promote their notion of and promote the Islamic caliphate, right?
Convert all of us into Islam, whether we like it or not. Those
right?
up word. It's made up by a political movement that wants to exploit and capitalize on white guilt to achieve its end goal, which is the revival of the caliphate. And the revival of the caliphate is to convert all of us into Islam, whether we like it or not. Those of us who refuse to do that, we will surely be beheaded. I'm sure I'm on top. And that is their end goal. And so they're exploiting these Western part of subversion. This is just a guest speech, but I wish that at some point someone here could start a lecture series on subversion, on active measures, on asymmetric warfare. That would get you interested in what it is that the Islamists are doing and how they've become so successful against these great nations with this incredible military and economic structures, and yet the Islamists are winning. Islam is spreading. They're doing better today than they were doing in 2001 after they hit us and we invaded Afghanistan. They've got Afghanistan back. They have Iraq back. They have Syria. And these Muslim governments are they're shaking in their boots. They're worried about what could happen to them because of the Islamist movement, and that's why the Islamist movement came here. And they're exploiting principles like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, and so on. And of course, these progressive movements that we have here, we've got to understand that, and we've got to become really creative in finding a way of preserving our principles. I don't want to give up on the freedom of speech, but on the other hand, on beating the Islamists at their game.
Is there room for compromise between principles?
No.
If I want to kill you and behead you, unless you convert to the religion I dictate, what would be the place of compromise?
Well, I would not mind converting, as I myself am an agnostic, so have no faith. Have no established faith.
Whoa, like what an idiot. Oh my God. Do you see how these like woke kids are like, I wouldn't mind. So he basically, oh my gosh. So this idiotic kid, okay, just said that if he had to choose between, how do I put this? He just said it's okay. He basically just said it's okay for people to force others to convert to Islam on pain of death, right? Like that is the most ridiculous answer I've ever heard. Like he's just wow, what an idiot. Like I guess he thinks he's being smug. I don't know. Like is he being smug? Like what a stupid idiot. And then right, like these are the kinds of people who are like free Palestine. Right.
However, I understand that some people would not share that vision. So,
like, oh my gosh, sorry, I totally missed this. Wait, how do I go back here?
Makes sense to.
Oh man, sorry, I totally.
That's why the Islamist movement came here.
Wait, where'd that kid go? Here we go.
Things, but I was curious as to what makes them different.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I got excited and I accidentally clicked on the video and I lost my spot there. I want to go back and look at his smug reaction. Like, I cannot believe that, like, shit-eating grin on his face, right?
Is there room for compromise between principles?
Watch this. Like, just look at his expression. Look at, like, the smug expression on his face as if, like, I don't know, he's somehow like, I told Ayaan, like, what an idiot.
If I want to kill you and behead you, unless you convert to the religion I dictate, what would be the place of compromise?
Well, I would not mind converting, as I myself am an agnostic, so have no faith. Have no established faith. However, I understand that some people would not share that vision. So,
look at his face. Like he knows he just made an idiot out of himself, right?
Let's play with this thought for a while. There's a time and a place for everything, and for some of the people, say in places like Africa, we don't talk about this, but Islamists are active in Africa and violently so. If you're a Christian in Egypt or a Hindu in parts of Pakistan, and you have someone looking at you and saying, you'll either lose your head or you convert to Islam, it makes sense to consider converting to Islam. But here today, for us to have the attitude of, well, we'll see what happens, and if we get to that point, I'll just convert, I will say, are you sure? Maybe you want to get educated on what would happen once you convert. What would your life be like, and the life of your sisters and women? What would they do to the Jews? He has said, this man, I repeat it, he said they're bacteria and they're microbes. And in the video that I showed you, they made it very clear it has nothing to do with Palestine. It has everything to do with them being Jewish. So they are going to annihilate the Jews. Will you stand by and watch that? Maybe I should give Introduction to Islam and Islamism as a lecture series, and once you understand what it's all about, you might develop a backbone.
Okay, guys, we need to find out if Ayaan actually did follow through on this and did actually start like an intro to Islam and Islamism 101, because yeah, we need to watch that ASAP.
I would look forward to that greatly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Theo already started my question.
Yeah, I will definitely look into seeing whether or not she made like a series out of that, because if she did, for sure, 100%, I will play it here, and we'll do live commentary and live watch party together 100%. I'm even going to make a note of that in my book so that I don't forget here. Let me just add this here.
But my question is inspired by what Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount about blessed are the peacemakers. So we see in human nature a desire to scapegoat, right? And you're arguing that the Jews are being there's a movement, or there's something that is trying to present Jews as the scapegoat, right? You talk about two important forces. Maybe the Islam nation state, which is like a political power, which is a threat, but then also this, like, you talk about this network, like mosques all over the place, and these communities, and all, it's infiltrating America and the West. So if we don't want to fall into our natural tendency to scapegoat and just become, instead of moving from anti-Semitism to anti-Islamicism, and our goal is to be peacemakers, then how do we do that? But at the end of your last question, you framed it as a violent struggle, right? If it's a violent struggle, then who is our enemies, and what do we do?
Right after 9/11, you were probably not born. How old were you on 9/11?
I was born in 2004.
2004, so before you. So right after 9/11, 2001, when we were having these discussions about how to treat this enemy that wasn't a state, but that was determined to destroy us, some of the discussions were, but we can't do this because of the Constitution. We can't do that because of the Constitution. We can't do this because... And a very frustrated judge, or Justice Posner, said, the Constitution is not a suicide pact. So I don't think there is a lot of space between committing suicide and doing what the young man here said, is to let it just all happen. And I mean, when the time comes, I guess we will convert, or we'll deal with it, whatever. And really looking at and studying openly, which we haven't been able to do because we've been self-censoring, and I gave you that list of all the different ways in which we underestimated the Islamist movement. But if we were to estimate it the right way, I will say in our history in America, it's not the first time that we are fighting an ideology that wants to destroy us. Communism, just the other day, not so long ago, most of us lived through it. And you call it a Cold War here, but in Africa and in other parts of the world, it wasn't cold, it was hot. and we starved and all of it. So there were very good reasons for the United States and Western countries to fight the ideology of communism. And they developed a number of, I'd say, tools to recognize it when it's applying internal subversive methods and when it's coming from an external position. And we can reapply those, but we do have to identify Islamism and Islamists as the enemy that they are and give them the full respect. You asked me to identify and you asked me to define what is an enemy. It's a force that wants to destroy you. How do I know that? In this infrastructure of mosques and madrasas and Islamic centers, etc., they say it explicitly. So there is something about don't listen to me, don't listen to the analysts with PhDs and the like. Listen to them and what they say and take it at their word.
So does this come down to a like propaganda war? Like we just inculcate our children before they do? Is that where the battle lies?
I think because the war they wage is totalitarian and total.
But ours,
And
where do we
ours,
meet them?
well, we have to meet, ours has to be total too. It has to be where they fight us with ideas, we fight them with ideas. Where they fight us with subversive means, we recognize that and we dismantle this infrastructure and kick them out of the country. We have those tools, we have these possibilities. We can't just let them spread. And this, again, we did the same to communists. We watched as communists grew and as they were subverting our societies, and we took the appropriate measures against individuals, against groups, and so on, but always with due process and always within the limits of the Constitution. But we can't, again, I repeat, the Constitution is not a suicidal pact.
Hi. So how do we educate against totalitarianism in general? And how do we educate people against like this victimhood mentality, which we see in broader terms? And how do we get to find more people like you? Like, can we re-educate more people, and how could we do that?
Through citizenship, through responsibility, we give individuals responsibility. We should hold individuals accountable. If you want to bring about an Islamist nation here, and if you're shouting from the rooftops that America should become Islamic, we should be able, through education, through schools and the media and every other form of communication, teach young people and older people what exactly that would look like. So one of the problems I've had since I joined this debate after 9/11, 2001, was we are not allowed to talk about what the Islamists want in mainstream media. When they attain power, what are they going to do? Well, look at the Taliban in Afghanistan. The country that I was born in, Somalia, we have a group there related to.
I mean, not just the Taliban. I mean, look at occupied Iran. Look at what the Islamists did to my country, right? Overnight, Iran went from a modern, secular, thriving country to like a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law. Like that's what Islamists do. We've all seen it, and yet for some reason, people in the West are either ignorant or they don't want to believe it, or I mean, I don't know, but it's just so bizarre to me.
Al-Qaeda, born out of the Muslim Brotherhood. Yeah. As soon as they came, got this amount of power, they started amputating people's hands, they started cutting people's throats off, they started stoning women for adultery, and on and on. We've got to be able to show in the universities and the schools and in our media, if you think you're going to be seduced by this idea, this is what it looks like. Islam is one of the fastest growing religions in Europe and in America, and they're growing also by converting people. The Hispanic population, apparently in Houston, is converting to Islam, but no one has told that population what it really means to be part of that, to join that religion, what it is that the religion says. We engage in self-censorship and in politeness, paradoxically, because we were bad to our Jewish minority. I remember a Jewish mayor in Amsterdam in the early days when we were talking about developing programs to assimilate Muslim communities into Holland. He kept insisting to me, but we don't want to do to the Muslim minorities what we did to the Jews. And that became the excuse to do nothing. That can't be right.
A word from the baby boomer corner. Your books changed my life. The last 20 years I have spent fighting the battles that you fight. I used to teach law in California, and hundreds of students demonstrated against me as a hate speaker when I only was having the debate that we have to have in our culture to know what the values are that we're defending, that we're presenting, and what we're being challenged with. I have stood here in Texas in a convention hall with thousands of other lawyers who wanted to laugh when I mentioned that there was a Sharia arbitration tribunal operating. Within the last few years, I've written an amicus brief with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser and a lot of the good American Muslims to explain to our Supreme Court that Muslim marriages under Sharia are being performed in the state of Texas. I've seen the marriage certificates, but people do not want to believe it. I have attorney and judge friends all over Europe who warn me, because of the political influence of Islam in Europe, that if America doesn't stand up and explain in the terms that our culture understands, and this will be up to you younger people, it is difficult when your job is threatened, when all you're doing is saying the First Amendment is what we stand on. And I am defending the Ayaan Hirsi Alis and the Dr. Zuhdi Jassers and Azra Nomani and Kanta Ahmed, brilliant Muslim Westerners who are feared that they will be silenced in our country because we're not defending our own First Amendment and our own cultural values. So thank you.
Karen, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Thank you very, very much. I would advise state legislatures, especially in Texas, come and take a look at Britain, Germany, Sweden. Come and see what has happened to these neighborhoods. In 1992, when I was there, it was a different world. It was a completely different planet almost. And now you see some of these scenes and you think, I'm looking at this footage. Is this Manchester and Birmingham, or is this Lahore and Cairo, or some kind of slum? And this is happening. So, I mean, in America, because we have a vast ocean between us and the rest of the world, we take a few things for granted, and we shouldn't wait until we get to the place where Europe is. And Europe, some of these countries are on the brink of civil war. And maybe when we see what they're doing, they've got hate laws all over the place. Hate laws were apparently legislation to fight anti-Semitism. That is one of the things I'm saying, let's knock it off, bring about free speech so that people can openly discuss what is going on in their neighborhoods and what's going on in these schools and what they're teaching these young people. The young people are being indoctrinated with the ideology of the men you saw here. And it's happening in these European countries. It's happening in America. So get young people to travel and come and look at these places. And then decide for yourself whether you will wait for them to give you the option or whether you will stand up and fight for what we have. Thank you.
Wow, that was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I really do appreciate how she just very clearly and concisely just puts the issue out there, and she doesn't mince words, right? She does not sugarcoat. She does not mince words. She's very clear. She's very concise. So if you enjoyed that, I will be adding the link to this lecture. It is available on YouTube. That's where I got it from. So I'll be including the link to this lecture in the video description on my YouTube channel. I'm going to do another live stream later tonight, 50-50. But you guys will know, like if I if I have like an upcoming live stream up in the next few hours, you'll see. But I hope to do another live stream. And for those of you who don't join us in the evenings, so in the evenings, we watch documentaries about Iran. Myself and the other Iranians, we go through them, we criticize them, and at the end of it, we give a final rating. So I will see you guys tonight. And just a final comment here. Just wanted to also promote my upcoming book. So if you are enjoying learning about the Middle East, if you are new to the Middle East, the Middle Eastern politics, I am working on a book right here, Pro Tips from an Iranian, A Beginner's Guide to Understanding Politics in the Middle East. So of course, you know, if you are an expert in the Middle East, this book is not for you. But for those of you who follow me on my other social media accounts, you may have seen my incredibly viral Iranian here pro tips. It's basically sort of an expansion of that. And I go through various topics. And, the book is very easy to read. It's very approachable. You don't even need to read it from like front to back, because each chapter is sort of, its own topic there. So if you are interested, the book is available for pre-order. You can just go to Amazon, type in my name, Goldie Gamari, or, even if you search pro tips from an Iranian, I'm sure it will come up. So there you go. There you go, guys. I wanted to thank all of you for joining me today. Big shout out to the mods and of course the members. And thank you to everyone who supported the channel. And hopefully I will see you guys all tonight. As always, Payanda Iran, Javid Shah.